Hi, everybody. I'm very excited today to have Dr. Oscar Serrallach with me that I'll be talking to. So just quickly, welcome to Kate Barnes Health Coaching TV, Oscar. Great to have you here with us.
Thank you, Kate. Great to be here.
And I will say it's late. You're in New York and it's something like 11 o'clock over there. So I'm very grateful for your time and really, really appreciate it. So I'll just give you everyone a brief background. So you graduated with a medical degree from the Auckland School of Medicine in New Zealand. You received the Fellowship of Family Medicine and General Practice in 2008, and you are the owner and principal doctor at the Mullumbimby Integrated Medical Centre in northern New South Wales, which has been running since 2011. And also a GP trained in functional medicine with a special interest in postnatal health. And through that, you have just released the amazing book, the author of The Postnatal Depletion Cure. So thank you very much for joining us. You have so much to share.
Yes.
And I mean, I'm reading the book at the moment and have underlined everything, dog-eared everything. So let's perhaps start with a term that I saw on one of your Instagram posts for the first time only a month or so ago, Oscar, matrescence.
I might just start with a small correction, if I may, Kate. So,
yeah, sure.
And just to do with the Mullumbimby Integrated Medical Centre, obviously I need to update that.
Yeah.
So I'm actually working out of a clinic in Byron Bay now, just because with being overseas, promoting the book, and so I amalgamated my clinic to be with a larger clinic. So just because postnatal care requires a large team, and so just so people aren't looking for me in Mullumbimby.
Great! What's the name of the clinic now, Oscar?
So it's called the Health Lodge in Byron Bay. So. And I can be sort of contacted through them. And so coming to this idea of the term matrescence. So it's such an important word. I think it's something that people, once they understand what it is, it's a real aha going, oh my God, that makes a lot of sense. Why aren't we sort of talking about it? So to understand matrescence, we kind of need to go to its similar term of adolescence. Everyone knows adolescence, and many people have, all adults have been through it, and it's a time of transformation from a child to an adult. Does it occur overnight? No, it takes several years. It can be a time of turbulence and lots of physical changes to the body, lots of upgrades that the brain gets in terms of new neurons and new ways of looking at the world, and it's all mediated through hormones. And we know the spectrum of experience with adolescence from great to terrible, and it's a time that people going through adolescence often need a lot of support, but we know that they'll get through it with the right environment. And I think is a idea that's equally profound as adolescence, if not more profound, in terms of the physical hormonal changes that are occurring in a woman's body. Now, if you have a look at one aspect of it, like neurogenesis, so the creation of new neurons. A lot of people don't know that is a time of greatest new neurons or neurogenesis outside of a human being, a fetus. So what that basically means is a woman's brain is getting upgraded during pregnancy. And this is just one of the things that's sort of occurring. And so I see matrescence as a transformation from being a pre-mother to a mother. It's lots of physical changes, hormonally mediated. And a mother doesn't necessarily look at the world in the same way that they did before they were a mother. And this is a very common thing that can be almost quite confusing for people going through a matrescence if you're not aware of it. But like adolescence, an adult doesn't even think about going back to being childlike or back to their their childlike body, whereas a lot of mothers think they need to get back to their pre-motherhood or their this pre-baby body idea, rather than embracing this idea of I've gone through a transformation. I can't I'm looking at the world differently. I've been upgraded. Going back to that old sort of life or way of thinking about that doesn't actually make a lot of sense.
No.
And I wish as a society we were really supporting mothers through their matrescence, because that's a time of great need. And I've become an expert in this idea around postnatal depletion when the matrescence doesn't go well on a number of different levels, where the body gets depleted in a lot of nutrients and hormonally the body can sort of get very affected, sleep deprivation, change of life direction. It's a recipe for, if not supported, of things going quite astray. And I think one of the things that we sort of alluded to before in our conversation before starting the recording is just around the support. That if mothers don't have the support or the acknowledgement that they need the support, it can be very difficult for them to even get a perspective around, I'm struggling alone. Other people may not be sort of feeling like this. And so,
but I think it's interesting. I think also as mums, we assume that we should be able to do it alone. Like there's no kind of thinking otherwise.
Yeah, but where did this idea come from? So I think it's almost a bit of a dangerous idea.
Absolutely.
Has it come out of feminism? Has it come out of, I think there's sort of multiple places that this idea has sort of come from, but the mothers for thousands of years have not done it alone. They've raised children and been mothers and community members and leaders of their community, not by themselves.
And in your book, sorry to ask you, in your book you give some great examples of that, especially in birth.
Well, one of the things, when I started seeing a lot of mothers in what seemed like a very depleted state in my clinic and started learning more about it, I think, well, has this always been the case, or is this a relatively new thing? And I think it's a fairly new phenomenon. So I went and had a look at a lot of these postpartum practices that old cultures had been practicing for thousands of years, and they're very different between cultures. But the things that they have in common are that they really allow the mother to recover hormonally, physically, emotionally, and start to set up a really good pattern of sleep and connection with the baby.
Yeah.
And it's a time where people aren't allowed to be nosy and just sort of turn up and be in that woman's sort of home. She's in a cocoon, if you like, and is allowed to sort of then be present in society when she's recovered. And it's typically 4 to 6 weeks.
Okay.
Occasionally a little bit longer, but we don't have a concept of that in our Western society. We're like, okay, when are you going back to work? Being a parent or a mother, just to plug on to my already busy lifestyle, and I should be able to just take it in my stride because I'm a 21st century woman, and I'm very much for gender equality and gender neutrality, and I think this is not about gender rights. This is about just acknowledging a process that the mother is going through, the matrescence, and acknowledging that it is a time of great support and always has been up until sort of recent times.
So what's the danger in not acknowledging that period? So in your experience, and how many people does this affect in terms of the postnatal depletion, Oscar? 2 different questions.
Well, I think it's unfortunately very common. So I probably have a little bit of a skewed view on things because most of the mothers turning up to my clinic, or not in a great way. But I would say, probably at least 50% of mothers in the 21st century, this modern age, have issues with significant depletion, and part of it's because we're older, having kids generally now. Already going into pregnancy sort of pre-depleted, and we don't already have support on board when we're starting our families, and we kind of just see how it goes. And if it's not going well, we don't know who to turn to necessarily, and it becomes very almost a little bit random what can happen to a mother sort of after that. And to your other question about, what are the consequences? Well, no, I think, there are no serious consequences in terms of diseases that I'm aware of. So we're not talking about that aspect of consequences, but I think the consequences are much more in terms of emotional health, social health, being present in your life and being able to turn up to your calling as a mother, and getting into your creative space. And if a mother's not present, if she's very stressed and anxious and fatigued and isn't able to really turn up in her life and in her community, there are big effects with that. And I think families really sort of suffer from that, and our communities don't benefit from having mothers in their full glory sort of turning up in the community. So
and my sort of personal experience is I had this incredible intuition that kicked in for me when the kids were younger, and it was in particular to the health of my children. And I don't think it led me on a journey into becoming a health coach and focusing on family well-being. But if I hadn't trusted that intuition and followed the intuition, I wouldn't have been able to kind of think of it as a gift in terms of how I'm nurturing my family. So I think we are disconnected from that too because of the busyness and the depletion and everything else going on.
Well, and if other people aren't talking about this intuition or this upgrade that you essentially received, the matrescence, and we don't trust that and we don't understand it, and people aren't talking about it, it can be very confusing. Whereas it is a gift.
And conflicting, isn't it?
Very conflicting, and can be very isolating, because if as a woman coming into motherhood, you haven't learned about what's going to happen to you in this new world you're sort of going into, it can be very, and I often hear stories of mothers going back into their workplace for the first time and just being in a state of shock and dissonance about, I don't feel the same about my workplace anymore, and I can't talk to anyone about it, and it must be me, or whatever conclusion that mother sort of comes to. But it can be very disconcerting. Rather than going, look, I'm actually in a better, newer, upgraded sort of place. What does my new sort of life look like? And one of the things that's very interesting for me is what mothers, if they've come to me with depletion issues, once we've gone through the programs and they're feeling a lot better, what they end up doing with their creativity and their this intuition, as you've sort of said. And often see people doing amazing sort of things, including like yourself getting into sort of health coaching and actually seeing this journey as a gift rather than a very confusing, unsupported time that I should be able to do everything by myself, and I seem to be struggling and everyone else seems to be okay. And it's.
And I think,
so
sorry, Oscar, for me, if I hadn't had the science background and been doing health coaching or that awareness of the body, I wouldn't have followed. And I also had great support from my husband and friends around me. So without that, I probably wouldn't have kind of been so confident in following that intuition. So
and I think there's a huge cost if you don't have that support like you had, and you're not able to go into that trusting your intuition and going, okay, well, life's looking a little bit different now. I just need, and also about what physical, emotional support you may sort of be needing.
So what can, like women are working full-time and busy roles, juggling family, home, children, work. What can they do, Oscar, to kind of tap into this and to start to feel replenish,
Yeah, so I think the first place to start is just to acknowledge that if you are busy, that that you are in fact busy. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, it's okay to say that you're overwhelmed. And unfortunately, a lot of people are in a state of overwhelm. So I think the first thing is just acknowledging and naming it. Understanding that being in overwhelm can have some quite negative effects on your sense of well-being. Can downregulate hormones. It can affect sleep, concentration, memory. Things can get affected when you're in a state of overwhelm for too long. And the remedy or the initial remedy for overwhelm is not necessarily not doing stuff or quitting your job, or it's more about within that busyness, making sure that you're having periods of quietness just to recalibrate. It's almost like getting the needle back to set point. And it doesn't have to be anything amazing to sort of start with, but it's about acknowledging that is something that's really important. How do I start getting those dynamics into my busy life? And the number one thing that helps get back to set point is sleep. So prioritizing sleep, especially if you're feeling you're in a pretty bad way. That's the one thing that you cannot supplement or meditate your way around is sleep. So that's the great restorer. And just to prioritize sleep. And if you've been disrupted by a baby that's waking up or feeding, or and how do you you obviously need to sort of be getting up to do that. So it's about going to bed as early as you can. And then I think there are things you can do to help offset the negative effects of sleep disruption. And there are adaptogenic herbs, acupuncture, restorative yoga, things that can really sort of help with that. And then I think the idea of having a practice to help get back to set point, and the practice may be different for different people. It may be something like a guided meditation like yoga nidra. It might be just some breath awareness. It might be some biofeedback like heart math. It might be praying, going to church. I mean, there's so many sort of things. It can be singing practice. So part of what I do is try to help coach mothers into what is it that may be useful, attainable for them. What is it that they can do whilst they're driving, while they're queuing in the shopping centre. Things that are kind of fairly easy. It's pretty hard for the average mother to be able to get a whole hour or hour and a half to go to restorative yoga practice. Because that requires a lot of coordination and planning. Great if you can do that once a week, but it's about what can you do with what you've got. But it's really important to start resetting that nervous system and hormonal system with getting back to sort of set point with these practices, and with at least getting out of overwhelm for short periods, and that can actually start making a big difference.
Great.
So that's for me often a starting point. And then if I'm seeing a client, then I'll be having a look at how do I support them through micronutrient. If I often find my mums are very low in certain micronutrients like iron, vitamin D, zinc. I'm often getting my mums onto a lot more healthy fatty acids, especially DHA and omega-3. That's really important for brain recovery, for want of a better term.
And where's the best source of that, Oscar?
Well, that's a great question, and we usually get it from fish. There's a lot of fear around sort of eating fish in this modern age, and I think some of that's founded, some of that maybe not, but we really haven't. We have to be very careful about the quality of our fish and where we're getting it from. And so a lot of my clients are moving to, they're not feeling great about fish oil, or they can't get small local oily fish from where they are, getting algae oil.
Okay.
So this specific omega-3 that's quite long, plant-based omega-3s aren't the same. They're good for other things, but when we're looking at sort of, chia seeds, flax seeds, hemp seed oil, those kind of things, they have got technically omega-3s, but not the omega-3s that we want. So DHA is really important to replenish the brain, really good to help soothe an overactive brain, and it has been shown in some studies to be quite effective for depression even. So
great.
So fish don't actually make omega-3s; they just eat things that eat the algae. So we're just kind of going to the source in some ways, and algae are kind of the omega-3 DHA machine, if you like.
Great. Okay. Excellent.
But we need plentiful doses of that.
So supplementation is probably best initially.
Yeah, definitely. And you can get a lot from eating fish. I don't know how you'd go getting that from eating algae. You probably need to be eating by the bucket load. But yeah, I'll often start with supplementation, moving into what are fish that are affordable, accessible, and clean enough to have in your diet, sort of 2 to 3 times a week. So they're kind of real just foundation sort of things.
Yeah, perfect.
And then I find a lot of my postnatal clients end up having issues with gut issues, and so it's often and sometimes it can be diseases, allergies, autoimmune conditions that are triggered by pregnancy and the birth, and so it's about trying to address those. And so, like yourself, and I'll really look at how I can help improve gut health, and the diet that a woman was on before her pregnancy is not necessarily the same diet that's going to serve her now. And so, so obviously doing a lot of work around choosing just a low inflammatory, high fat, and low hollow carbohydrate diet, I think tends to work well for most mums.
So hollow carbohydrate, did you say? Hollow.
Yeah. So hollow carbohydrates is just a way to express food that just has carbohydrates and not much else.
Okay, sure. Yes.
And so these are typically things like rice, pasta, and sugary things. Whilst having a little bit of pasta and rice may be fine, it shouldn't be the bulk of your meal.
Yeah. So more nutrient dense foods.
Nutrient dense food is really important. And so you should be getting your carbohydrates through your nutrient-dense foods like above-ground vegetables and some of the below-ground vegetables. Yeah,
great. With hormones, in regard to hormones, I see a lot of thyroid conditions, adrenal fatigue, things like that flare up after children.
Yeah, and I'd like to be able to give you exact numbers of what's going on there, but it really hasn't been very well studied. So you think we would know the rate of thyroid disease after having kids. Apart from the Danish thyroid study that came out a few years ago, I haven't been able to find any long-term studies around pregnancy, birth, and then following up looking at thyroid disease.
Okay.
So we're really at the beginning of understanding some of these longer-term effects of matrescence that maybe hasn't gone very well. I have no doubt that things like Hashimoto's thyroiditis, rates go up significantly after the birth of a child. But that's just more my observation than sort of hard, rigorous science. And then I think adrenal fatigue. I don't necessarily like the term adrenal fatigue because it kind of indicates that the adrenals may be somehow damaged or not functioning properly. It's more that the adrenals stop listening to the cries of help from the brain. So it's kind of an adrenal numbing, if you like.
Okay.
The adrenals are working, they're perfectly able to work well, but they just have become numb.
Okay.
And so with this, so I think it's just a different way to look at it, because
I like that.
people talk about adrenal fatigue or that kind of, there's it's not really respecting what's kind of going on. The adrenals aren't fatigued. It's not like they're tired and just panting. They're just sitting there waiting to do things, but they're not, because of certain loop and feedback mechanisms.
So is it like they've been constantly bombarded, the communication's been constant, so much
Yeah, there's so much noise, if you like, that they become a little bit deaf, and so they're not going to listen to those noises, only listen to really loud noises.
Is that a bit like my kids? No, I couldn't. Not all the time, no.
I mean, in fact, mothers become more sensitive to that type of noise.
Yes.
Rather than less.
And is that with the hormone connection as well? We kind of become a bit irritated.
Yeah, so that's hormone and neurology. So part of what happens, we get extra neurons in certain parts of the brain, so we become much more sensitive in some areas. And then if you have this adrenal underfunctioning, you can become a lot more sensitive to sound and bright lights, and then the nervous system becomes much more reactive.
Yeah, right. Okay. So that's another symptom, another clue of the imbalance, the depletion. Yeah.
And so again, the nervous system isn't able to get back to set point as easily. And that's a real sign that, so some of the end sort of symptoms of postnatal depletion have to do with hormonal underfunctioning. They typically adrenal, DHEA, sometimes testosterone, sometimes some of the other steroid hormones like pregnenolone, and then thyroid can often be underfunctioning. And if you understand, hormones are a signal from one part of the body to another part of the body about how to operate and do something correctly. And I see hormones like a symphony when they're working well, and just lots of glitchy noises when they're not working well. And we're not talking about diseases of hormonal systems that an endocrinologist would know. We're just talking about this complex sort of feedback loops that occur that aren't working optimally.
Yeah.
And then the body's left in a state where it's just not responding in a particularly healthy way to things. And so this can be just extreme fatigue on waking up, running out of energy at the wrong time of the day, often when the kids come home from school or just after lunch, energy really sort of plummeting.
Yeah. The irritability, I mean, those clues are great, Oscar. What else do we need to look for?
Hypervigilance that doesn't seem to be matched with what's going on, or anxiety that doesn't seem to be matched with what's going on. So almost anxiety turning into worry. So there's some of the sort of the key things, and then this fatigue is quite important as well. So a lot of mothers aren't getting enough sleep. So there's a reason for some of their fatigue, but they just aren't easily able to sort of, after a couple of good nights sleep, even that's even possible for some mothers, they just still don't feel necessarily that refreshed. Poor concentration, poor memory are the sort of key features of postnatal depletion. And there's an interesting phenomena that I find called nominal aphasia, which is a fancy word or term to describe difficulty remembering nouns, and these are often quite naming things. So the common thing that I hear mum saying is, can you please pass me the thingy so I can plug it into the thingy, and they just cannot, difficulty finding those common nouns. Again, it's not a sign of brain damage. It's not a sign of Alzheimer's, which a lot of mums kind of joke about these sort of things. It's just a sign of an overwhelmed brain that's kind of skidding on the ice, if you like. And so for me, it's a real clue that we're really dealing with a depleted state when I say that joke and about, can you please pass me the thingy? And mums go, oh my God, that's happening to me so much. I don't remember where my car keys are. And it's just a sign that, mother's been in a depleted state for a while, essentially.
So, Oscar, what can the mums do that are, that the husbands work long hours, so they get up to the baby. They always get up to the baby. You know, they don't have a lot of support. Maybe their parents are in the country or away. I mean, and they, you know, finances are obviously, you know, always a concern. What do you have any suggestions for those mums, which I think are many of us?
Yeah, for sure. And the first thing I say is just acknowledging that you know, that the support is needed, and to try to get it in whatever shape, form you can. And so I see a lot of mothers sometimes forming groups where they'll help take turns at looking after kids, so that can sort of be quite useful, especially if you're needing to get to an appointment, those kind of things, and you don't want to have to necessarily hire help.
And asking for help.
Always hire help if you can.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's not a sign of failure to ask for help. It's actually a sign that you're needing help. And so this is why it always starts with acknowledgement, and then just going, well, and then where can you get support from? And so, you know, and it's just a matter of, you know, asking around where is the support in this community, from community groups to other mothers who may be wanting to sort of, you know, set up teams. And like I said, if you can afford hired help, you know, it makes a lot of sense. You know, myself, you know, I ended up on and off for 5 years with my kids, just because, and again, these weren't trained professionals, they're often sort of backpackers, those kind of things, but a lot of the time it actually worked quite well to have an extra set of hands on board. It didn't cost very much.
Excellent.
So I think every family kind of needs to have a look what's in their budget and what's in their immediate sort of vicinity. But just to say, look, I need to get help from wherever I can. And I'm always coming back.
Go on. I interrupted, Oscar. There is a bit of a time lag, but continue. I'll go back to what I was going to say.
And then, you know, the other big issues around sleep. So I find a lot of these mums that are in these kind of situations will forego sleep and will often be up late at night trying to do extra jobs and then have some time with their partner or with their life. And if you're in a really depleted state and struggling, I'll often say, if you can go to bed earlier, a couple of hours earlier, even for a couple of months, that can be the difference between recovery or not recovery.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And once a mother gets a clearer head, it's much easier to become more efficient with your day. And there's a lot less tendency to go into this sort of, you know, martyr state, where mums are just so busy that they're just thinking about what's the next job, what's the next job, what's the next job. And it's very hard to get those activities into place that get you back to set point when you're in this sort of chasing the next job kind of mode. And I totally understand that when you're super busy, it's a very understandable place to go, but you actually can become quite inefficient in that state, and things can take you a lot longer to get done.
Yes, and I think also sometimes getting the kids to bed a little earlier can help. You know, sometimes I see mums, the kids are going to bed at 8, little ones 8 or 7:30 even, but just bringing them half an hour forward can help the kids and mum.
Yeah, and exhausted mums, it's a lot easier just to let the kids stay up a little bit later because it's easier. But you know, if you're so you're right. So a little bit early can make a big difference as well. But yeah, it's all about support. Where can I get support from?
Yeah, awesome. And I mean, Oscar, I won't take up any more of your time. It's been invaluable. So much great info that you've shared. Is there anything, one other thing you'd like to leave with mums? I guess maybe the most important thing for them, if we haven't already covered it.
Well, we kind of have. You know, the most important thing is just to acknowledge the matrescence, and that the mothers have gone through a transformation.
Yeah, I love that.
So it's not just, and with that comes some gifts, and with that comes some challenges.
Yeah.
And mothers were never intended to be alone or be able to do things alone.
No.
mothers have always done things in groups and supported each other.
I think, yeah, that is, I think that is awesome. I think that is such a lovely reminder. And that, you know, we're very social, like we are social and nurturing, and that connection is key.
Yeah. And for me, you know, this revival of motherhood is such an important thing. And I often say to my mums, you know, this is not a call to arms, you know, like it's a call to be in arms.
Oh, I love that. Beautiful.
And it's just, again, we can, I think, really heal society through, you know, through this revival of motherhood and really making sure our mothers are sort of doing well. And as a recovered mother, being a wise woman for women who are going through their matrescence. I think that's part of the solution to this. So people aren't having to go through things cold and not supported and kind of a state. We allow an adolescent to go through adolescence and not say anything. It's going, no, we're not going to say anything. And we're going to judgmental and blame them if they're struggling. You know, what a disaster that would be if that was kind of the common attitude. And so you know, the big take home for me is just around the acknowledgement of matrescence and going, wow, if you can really understand how profound that is. And I think it's a deeply profound thing on so many levels. If we embrace that rather than we're freaked out by it, you know, society could look very different. And get support where you can get it. With a lot of my recovering mothers, for example, you know, it's just a very simple tip that I give my mothers in that first 6 weeks. If you can be at home as much of the time as you can, you know, and if you're having people coming to visit, and I say don't have any visitors, no visitors, only staff. And that's a bit of a joke to sort of go, well, if you're having people coming to your house to sort of look at the baby, give them jobs to do. And so, and this is often, you know, the role of the father or, you know, other caregivers or the other parent. So if someone's coming around, get them to bring some food around, get them to help take the garbage out, or take your car for a service, or what other things that may be potentially taking up time, just so the mother and or father can be in that baby bubble as long as possible. And the benefits will be huge if that's allowed to sort of happen.
I love that. I'll even to have a sleep, you know, to mind the baby and have a sleep. Yeah.
Exactly. Or to do something that may take some stress or energy, like having to cook food and, you know, wash the plates and those kind of things. You know, the last thing a mother needs in that first 6 weeks is people coming over, wanting to see the baby, and then subconsciously expecting they're going to be somehow provided for in terms of, you know, tea and biscuits or, you know, whatever.
Yeah, that's right. I have a clean house.
Yeah, exactly. So we need to get away from that. And if the mother doesn't have a clean house, like, well, that's your job. Clean the house.
No, like we're laughing, but it's so true. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Oscar. Really appreciate it. Where's the best people to find you? Where's the best people place?
Well, a good place to start is just my website. So just oscarserrallach.com. Now, my main place of work is through the Health Lodge in Byron Bay, so you can find out lots about me sort of through them.
Great.
And now the book's been sold online. Lots of bookstores have it.
Great.
And it's really creating some ripples out there. So I feel very excited. Excellent.
I'm sure it's exciting, and it's for me. It's nice to have the book and your work, because it just gives something concrete and something people say, yeah, okay, that's it. Like and something to move on.
Yeah, I think it's a very good starting point for most mothers, and I really encourage people. I don't want people to get depleted, so you know, if you can have this knowledge before having children or read it, you know, during your pregnancy, just to have an idea where things may go and how to avoid it, because that prevention is obviously a better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Oscar. Take care and enjoy the rest of your trip.
Great. Thank you, Kat. And I love the work that you're doing too. So I think we're both part of the solution in terms of helping this revival of motherhood as what it sort of should be. And we're just helping people on their health journey. I think that's
definitely. And it
such
will
important work.
And their families too. Thank you so much, Oscar.